So when you've got your new set of values, how do you keep them from becoming something you put on a wall and never think about? In this lesson, we'll talk about how to live with them and work with them every day and make sure they're relevant in your work and in your life. For us at Buffer, values are something that are talked about every single day in one way or another. Whether we are making the decision to launch a new feature or plan a new feature, whether we are trying to provide more value to our customers and our audience through our marketing efforts, whether we're choosing what content to share on Facebook or Twitter, always in the back of our minds is what this means from the lens of our values. Are we showing gratitude? Are we sharing our process transparently? Are we creating an environment that is positive, that highlights the good of social media? So they're really key in all the decisions that we make every day. For example, at Buffer, our value of default to transparency led us down a very interesting path when it comes to salary transparency. We first decided to make salaries transparent within our team internally, and that process went pretty well. There were a lot of questions that we needed to answer, a lot of tough conversations that we needed to have to make sure everyone felt comfortable with the process. But we did have a value that guided us, default to transparency, which means unless there's a reason not to, we share it. And we felt that the reasons not to weren't as strong as the reasons to do it. So after the decision was made to share salaries internally, we took it even further. We said, what would it look like if we shared our salaries with the world? What if we made this information public? We tried to think through the pros and the cons, the challenges and the benefits of this process, and we ended up making the decision that it did make sense to share our salaries with the world. And as a result, you can now go to Buffer's salary calculator and find out exactly what you would make if you were part of the Buffer team and in any specific role that you might want to play at Buffer. Our values also guide us when we are planning outside events or when we are attending events. So what we've done in those cases is to create a code of conduct that guides us, and this is something that I would recommend to any company that is working together or working with the public. And it basically says this is what we expect from teammates and this is what we can't tolerate. These are the behaviors that we stand for and these are the behaviors that are not okay with us. It's always been better in our experience to make it explicit. You may think you'll never have a situation where you'll have to give a teammate feedback about this particular element or a microaggression or something that felt like harassment. You may think that we're entirely unified in like how you see things, how you communicate together. But just having that written down, having that deliberate aspect of it is a protection and a little bit of a security feature for anyone on the team. So in case we were to ever have to use this document or ever have to like pull up those resources, it's been handled. It's already been something that we've thought about and been deliberate about as far as viewing it through the lens of our values. So there is that protection, there is that recourse in the case we would ever need it. Another example that I really admire and a lot of us at Buffer admire is Patagonia. Of course, they have a value of environmentalism, of conservation, and famously a few Black Fridays ago launched a really big ad, "Don't buy this jacket." So obviously that's going to catch a lot of attention in a newspaper or a magazine. And the idea behind it was to talk about consumer culture, to talk about whether we actually need to buy all the things that we're buying or whether we could get by with fewer things. And that's so radical for a company that is designed to sell things, basically. But for them to live up to their values, that was the sort of apparent move for them. That was what they needed to do to be true to their values and to who they are. And you know, when you take a radical stance like that, when you do something that is a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit out of your comfort zone, folks are going to follow you there. They're going to feel the passion. They're going to feel that you're going out on a limb for what you believe in. And that really resonates with people. It also has a big impact on the hiring front as well. So an example I really love is from Zappos. They've got a huge focus on customer service, customer support, customer gratitude. And when they bring new people on, they go through a long training program specifically focused on values and making sure the folks feel like they are a strong fit with Zappos's values. So much so that if the end of their training program arrives and they don't feel aligned with the values, they don't feel like those are something that they can work with and live with day to day, Zappos pays them to quit. Thousands of dollars to quit, to say this isn't the right fit for me. Values are also going to be immensely useful when challenges come up in your business and your company. They're going to help you find your way through those moments using what you already know about who you are and who you want to be in the world. For example, at Buffer, we had to make a really tough decision around a feature that we had that was based on our values. And we made the tough decision to get rid of that feature. It was something that customers really loved, but we couldn't support it and feel in line with our values. What it was called suggestions, and basically we would scour the internet for things that folks might want to share on social media, and we would have this in a queue for them to be able to share at any time. So content on different types of topics, inspiration, business, leadership, available for them whenever they wanted to share it. Great idea. Folks really enjoyed it. The problem came when it felt like we were encouraging sharing content without being part of the conversation about content. So when you make it so easy that folks can share something without reading it, or share something without even having any sort of knowledge of what it is, what the words are within the content, it's really tough to say that you have a value of listening as a company if that is a feature that you're putting out into the world. And it was so easy and folks really loved it. It really keeps your social media queues brimming with pretty good content because we chose it ourselves. However, it just didn't work with our values. We couldn't say this is who we are and this is what we stand for and how we make decisions and have that feature spamming people, basically, for lack of a better word. So it was a case of making a tough call, basing it on our values. We still, don't know if it's the right decision for the bottom line. We know that it was the right decision for our values and for who we are and how we want to act as a company. So what's tricky here is that you can view this from a lens of us as Buffer, the company, doing a little bit of pushing our values onto other people. So where do you draw that line between here's who we are and here's what we stand for, but also we can meet you where you are in the world? Not every customer has to agree with the Buffer values. Like, not everyone has to sign on for that experience. We know it's very unique and very particular to us. The deciding factor here was that the features we put out into the world are who we are. They're all that we really have to stand on as far as this is who Buffer is, this is what Buffer does. And we couldn't, in good conscience, feel comfortable with being part of an environment that was contributing in any way to folks sharing content that they hadn't read, to folks spamming their social media followers with content that may not really be like who they were, what they felt aligned with. So while there are a lot of people who I'm sure use that feature very responsibly and in a great way, we couldn't stand behind it as a company and put that out into the world with the Buffer name on it and feel like we were living up to our own values. So these were just a few examples of how you might find yourself living your values on a day-to-day basis, from the very ordinary and everyday to more major sort of campaigns and momentous moments in a company. The main thing to remember here is that what's important is living with them, evolving them, making sure that you discuss them and think about them. Keep them real, keep them part of the fabric of your day-to-day life and the decisions you make, and that's going to keep them strong and something that will truly guide you. In our final lesson, we'll talk about sharing your values. Whether you choose to share them just within your team or with the world at large, this is a really important step of explaining who you are and how you want to operate as a company.